NASCAR gives their annual State of the Sport address and a big win for now for NASCAR. Yo, what's up everyone? My name is Jet. Welcome back to an episode of Inside Lance. Hope you're having a wonderful weekend. It's a championship weekend for Phoenix Raceway for the trucks, Xfinity, the Cup Series, and of course the ARCA Menard Series, all scheduled to take place throughout the weekend. We will have pre-race and post-race coverage covering everything that happens here in the championship finales. But let's start, of course, with our first story, NASCAR and the lawsuit with 2311 and Front Row Motorsports. Now, they had a hearing, I believe, on Tuesday. The judge says he will give until Friday his final statement on whether or not 2311 and Front Row can proceed as charter teams while they continue going on with the lawsuit. And unfortunately, the judge has favored in NASCAR's way. The judge has denied 2311 and Front Row Motorsports from the preliminary injunction hearing, meaning at the moment, 2311 and Front Row will enter the 2025 season as open cars. Oddly enough, this happened during the middle of the State of the Sport address, so take that at what you will. Now, you would expect an appeal from both 2311 and Front Row. However, the teams do risk of getting the case thrown out because of this apparent clause that even open teams in NASCAR can't sue NASCAR for any antitrust lawsuit or anything like that. So there's a chance that this case could get thrown out for 2025. Unless they can prove the release of the claims clause for the open teams agreement will not be enforced. So the question is why? Why did the judge deny the request from 2311 and Front Row? Well, according to the judge, it says that the team did not meet their burden as required for him to grant one. The judge said that the team's argument that they may not survive as open teams due to the fact that they might lose sponsors and or drivers to their race teams. The judge says that that was not enough, that it was all speculative and that they needed to show hardcore like proof, like this is happening right now. The judge will quote unquote fast track the lawsuit to have it proceed as quick as possible. Another part in his ruling is stated that quote, at this stage, the teams are no closer to irreparable harm than they are to the command, driver start your engines at the first race of the 2025 season. That is to say, although plaintiffs allege that they are on the brink of irreparable harm, the 25 racing season is months away. The stock cars remain in the garage. So simply put, the reason why the judge denied the request of the teams is because, listen, you say all this stuff, and while that could happen, it hasn't happened yet, which I'm sorry, I'm just speaking this. I know how the law works completely different, but from the outside perspective, that sounds very dumb in my eyes. Let's use an extreme example. That's like you saying that, oh, hey, I have a tiny tumor that could grow into something big, but the doctor will not operate you until it starts affecting your possibility of living. That's what I'm getting from this judge's explanation. Now, with his argument by saying that we have to wait for you to be able to actually receive harm or basically receive something that NASCAR can't cover, there have been examples in the past where we have seen that teams aren't able to survive that long as open teams. We look at JTG Darty Racing. They had a car in Ryan Preece in the 37 car, I think in 2021, as an open car, and they had to shut that down by the end of the season. Gaunt Brothers Racing ran for the 2020 season full time with Daniel Suarez, and they basically had to close up shop at the end of the season. I mean, they still ran some races in 2021, but after that, they had to shut down their doors. So, granted, those two teams compared to the funding that 2311 and Front Row have is completely different. But the fact of the matter is that you cannot survive long as open teams. Yes, with 2311 and Front Row, they can maybe survive a bit longer than 1 or 2 seasons, but still, it's not like they can last the entirety of the charter agreement from 2025 to 2031. No way that both teams can be able to last that long, I think. So yes, in the letter of the law, it makes sense that this is all speculatory, like what you're saying that yes, this could happen, but it could also not happen, or it's something that NASCAR can't cover. In a sense, it hasn't happened yet. This is all speculative. And while I understand that on one side, at the same time, you also have to use logic, use common sense that when you're pumping tens of millions of dollars for just one Cup car, you now expand that to then 2 for Front Row and 2311, both each want to grab a third charter in a sense. The price range is going to keep rising and rising. So for both teams to be able to last the entirety of the charter agreement as open teams is not logical. It doesn't make sense how they could possibly survive for that period of time as open teams. And for the judge to say that, well, we have to wait for you to start losing teams, start losing drivers, to me, that is very dangerous, because it could be a point where, okay, we have to wait for you to start losing stuff. By the time they start losing stuff and then you accept the agreement, it could possibly be too late. So I don't agree with the judge's reasoning for it. While I understand it on one side, at the same time, if you look at it from common sense point of view, it doesn't make sense. What's next? All we can do is wait. I'm assuming that 2311 and Front Row will appeal this, but I mean, it's going to be tough. It's going to be very interesting now that Front Row and 2311, all 4 cars, at least, we don't know about the third charter or anything like that. Obviously, since they were denied that, they're probably not going to get that. But with 4 cars now, Bubba Wallace, Tyler Reddick, Todd Gillen, and now with the 34 car of Noah Gragson, or I'm assuming the 34 of Noah Gragson, they will now have to race their way into the Daytona 500, it seems, for 2025. And now on to the annual State of the Sport address by NASCAR that just wrapped up minutes ago, but right before I started recording. We're going to go over all the main little portions. A huge credit to Jeff Gluck, Bob Hawkers. They all have full threads on everything that happened in the State of the Sport address. So if you want to, you can go ahead and check it out. But we're just going to go over the real main portions of it. Now, we start off this State of the Sport address with a little bit of controversy by Steve Phelps saying that all the Championship 4 drivers deserve to be here, saying that all the teams knew the format, all the drivers knew the format, and they all deserve to be here. I really wish someone gave a question about Joey Logano, because yes, again, Steve Phelps is kind of right in the sense of the playoff format. The way it is structured, everybody knew it. Everyone, those 4 drivers, played that format to perfection this year. So yes, under the sense of the format, they deserve to be here. But under the sense of a logical perspective, do they really deserve to be here? The only one you could probably argue for that is Tyler Reddick. And speaking of the format, Jeff Gluck gave a good question to Steve O'Donnell and Steve Phelps on how the Championship 4, none of them are leading any of the categories, as to why does NASCAR think that this format is still the best way to determine a champion. And again, their case, in my eyes, did not help.
Listen, Jeff, the format is the format, right? And we are always looking, if there are opportunities for us to tweak something, so be it. I mean, we're not the only sport where the best statistical team does not get to the Final Four or the Super Bowl or the World Series. So the format, there was a huge emphasis put 10 years ago when the format was put into place about winning, right? 3 of the 4 on Sunday, they won to get through. And I go back to the format itself. I think creates incredible racing. So if we are all going to be honest and say, hey, how's the racing been during the playoffs in these 9 weeks? I don't think it's been ever better. And I think part of that is due to the system itself. They race their guts out.
I'm going to be saying the word delusion a lot, with Steve O'Donnell saying we're not going away from playoffs. We're never going away from playoffs. It is very disappointing, because even though the racing has been really good, we saw Miami was great, Martinsville was great, but I would argue that you would still see great racing without the playoffs. Ryan Blaney, I still feel like, would make a charge that he did without the playoffs, even if he was 6th in points. You know, if this was the original Chase era, if he was 6th in points, 90-some points back, if he still had a car that had a shot at winning the race, he would still drive his way up towards the front. Tyler Reddick would still make the move on the outside on the final lap, regardless of what era you're in. I just don't see how the correlation between the great racing that we have seen in the playoffs, because we've seen some really good racing, correlates to, oh, that's only because of the playoffs. No, I think it's just because the drivers have a desire and a will to win, regardless if it's the Winston Cup, Chase era, or playoff era. Regardless, if they have a shot to win, they're gonna damn well take it. Look at Watkins Glen. Watkins Glen was a great race, a great finish, and it involved no playoff drivers. It involved Chris Buescher and Shane Van Gisbergen. I feel like great racing is gonna happen regardless. If you have a good car, a good tire, and a good track, you're gonna get good racing, regardless of how you view it. I don't like the fact that how NASCAR is implying that the great racing we have seen is only because of the playoffs. If this was the Winston era, we would see none of this stuff. That I just do not believe for a second. Now, of course, there were questions about the charter agreement for next year, and Steve Phelps gave a little bit of insight as to what the breakdown as to how much teams, tracks, or NASCAR will get with the new deal. This is what he said.
Which primarily, the big win for the race teams was money. And I won't go into what that money split looks like, but what I will say is that amount of money, it now puts the race team starting in 25 as the single largest beneficiary of our media deal. And we did that because the race teams were upside down financially. So two ways to get out of that, right? You give them more money, right? Or help them earn more money through sponsorship. So we have done the former. We're going to do the latter to help our race teams. And then trying to cut costs. And that provides for healthy race teams.
So saying that the teams will get the majority of the charter agreement payment from the TV networks next year. Now, Chris Yates, the attorney for NASCAR, during the preliminary injunction hearing earlier this week, said that teams will be getting nearly half of the TV revenue beginning next year. So again, how will that affect in terms of how much will it actually cover in terms of the cost for all the race teams? As we mentioned in previous episodes, throughout the entirety of this whole charter negotiations, that no one is making money. Hendrick Motorsports has gone on record to say that they haven't made a profit in 10 years. Would this new split, this new TV split, because yes, it is a bump up. The new TV deal is more than the previous TV deal. With the teams getting much more of a cut of this new pie, will it actually help teams make money? Because that's something that Steve Phelps said, that healthy teams leads to healthy racing. So that's something he has acknowledged, which is a good thing that he's acknowledged that you need to have healthy teams in order to have a healthy NASCAR. But will this new pie that the teams will be getting, this new cut of the pie, will it actually help the teams? Is something that has yet to be seen yet. Next up is officiating. Oh boy, officiating. Oh man, love to talk about that. That has been a hot topic, a disappointing topic throughout NASCAR this year. Has just been the awful, inconsistent officiating calls that NASCAR has done throughout this year and throughout many years. That was again brought up. It was a big topic in the State of the Sport address. Steve O'Donnell didn't help their case. Let's just say that.
But I will say about our group, especially those officiating each and every weekend, there is no harder sport to officiate. We don't have timeouts. We don't wait during the action. Cars going 200 miles an hour. You got to make split-second decisions. We don't always get those right, but for the most part we do. And what I'm most proud of is we come, we speak to the media, we're transparent on every single call that we make.
I don't know whether to use the word insanity or delusion by NASCAR, but for y'all to say that you do not have an officiating problem. I made a whole ass video a couple months ago at Talladega where y'all missed so much stuff. And yes, we know that NASCAR, it happens at very fast, but I mentioned with Talladega, this was stuff that was happening at either 45 miles an hour or when the cars were stopped. So you can't use the argument by saying, listen, things are happening so fast, because even when nothing is happening, y'all still miss so many things. And speaking of the officiating, they obviously mentioned Martinsville and how it pissed off everyone at NASCAR. Again, don't hate the player, hate the game. Like I said in my review on Sunday night, I don't blame what the OEMs did. In a format where we're under right now, where everything is now within 1 or 2 points, because everything is now a 3-race sprint, everything is going to come down to 1 or 2 points. Because of that, team orders, manufacturer orders is going to be much more rampant. Again, NASCAR has stated that, listen, if y'all try to do this again, they said that they had a meeting with the OEMs that if you try to do this again, there will be punishment. Yeah, they say that, but I guarantee you that they're going to find a way around it. Either with code names or whatever, they will find a way around it. That's just the name of the game. Because you created a system where everything is now determined by 1 or 2 points, these types of team/manufacturer orders are going to be much more rampant. It's like NASCAR putting a Band-Aid over a dam. It's like, no, you need to get to the root of the problem. A Band-Aid ain't gonna fix it. It's still gonna happen. You have to get to the root of the problem. This type of manufacturer team orders wouldn't be as rampant in previous eras. I'm not saying it won't happen. It could. We saw with Richmond in 2013. This was during the Chase era. But still, it wouldn't be as rampant if it was in previous eras compared to today's era. And then finally, again, the talk about OEMs coming into the sport on how NASCAR wants to get a 4th and even a 5th. They said 5 OEMs is a perfect spot for their sport. It's kind of much of the same thing on how they're having discussions with several OEMs. They did mention one that's a front runner that they're close to a deal. They're just looking at the business side of things, if it works for both brands. More than likely, that front runner is Honda. That they have always been a huge rumor that Honda is going to be the next OEM to join NASCAR. So with them being the front runner wouldn't surprise me. That's just all speculative. Steve Phelps has said that they do look at possibly in a couple years of them entering the sport, or them at least announcing that they will be joining the sport. But in reality, it's been much of the same. Not really much we took from that interview of, some breaking news. But overall, there wasn't much to take away from the State of the Sport address. Again, it was kind of much of the same thing. There were little nuggets in there that kind of left you to take away from something out of it, but it was nothing groundbreaking. It was kind of more or less the same. But in my eyes, if you want to know my full opinion on it, it was frustrating. Again, with Steve O'Donnell saying that we don't have an officiating problem, yet we have seen time after time after time again having to see Elton Sawyer in front of the NASCAR hauler after the race trying to explain the decisions or the things that NASCAR have missed. I mean, at least 5 or 6 times we have seen this happen. NASCAR officiating is not going to be perfect. We get that. But it should be to a point where we see Elton Sawyer maybe 1 or 2 times a year. Not we have seen Elton Sawyer how many times? I'm pretty sure I can go back. Maybe I said 5 times. It's probably double that as to how many times we have seen Elton Sawyer in front of the media press because of something NASCAR did with officiating. And it has not gotten better. Over the last few seasons, ever since David Hoots left NASCAR or retired from NASCAR or left NASCAR a few years ago, it has gotten worse. I don't know what it is, but it has gotten worse. Just countless missed calls. Hell, Kyle Busch missed a tire in turn 3, and yet somehow they didn't pick it up until after they took the green flag. That was last week. I mentioned Talladega that happened a few weeks before that. I mean, we can go back to so many things that happened just in recent time of things that NASCAR just clearly missed. And yet there has been no fixture of it. I mentioned what happened in 2022 in a couple episodes ago on Inside the Lines about with William Byron and Denny Hamlin and how they simply missed it. Well, there have been examples this year of them simply saying, we missed it. I thought with the fishing, you're supposed to get better. Maybe have more cameras, have more people on. Maybe have have more people on site around the racetrack to report anything about that has happened. I don't know, but it seems as though that officiating has gone worse and worse as the years go by. And to hear hear what Steve O'Donnell saying we don't have an officiating problem, it's been the best it's been, is just delusion at its very finest. And that is so frustrating to hear. I would not mind if Steve O'Donnell would have come out and say, listen, this season, we haven't done a good job. I would be, but hey, listen, you take accountability. But you cannot say you don't have an officiating problem. You cannot, with a straight face, say that. And that is what is so frustrating. There are so many things that I think that NASCAR can easily fix. It's funny. NASCAR, there are so many things that are going so well for the sport, and you're seeing it. I mean, look at attendance. There have been an uptick in attendance, even with ratings. Some of the biggest races, the Clash, the Daytona 500, Coke 600, that was basically ended because of Fox, Chicago delayed. All the big races have had some type of issue, and yet still ratings have picked up. There is momentum with NASCAR, but it feels as though that NASCAR is stunting their own potential based on their own doing. And it is so frustrating to see that, because I look at NASCAR and I think there are so many things that are so good with the sport. I look at the racing. The racing, at least on intermediates, have improved. We're starting to see now the short track racing is starting to improve, at least with Martinsville last Sunday. There are some things that are improving. NASCAR, in terms of their social media department, their marketing department, have gotten a lot better than years past. There are so many good things with the sport, but then there are some bad things that can easily be fixed. And it's like NASCAR just goes around, goes on a whole treasure hunt, instead of just making a beeline to quickly fix the problem. They want to make it a whole treasure map adventure to try and solve it. and that is what's most frustrating. But that is it for this episode of Inside the Lines. What are your thoughts on the NASCAR lawsuit, on NASCAR basically winning the lawsuit and the state of the sport address? Did you leave the address feeling satisfied, frustrated? Let me know in the comment section down below. As always, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more content. Until next time, my name is Jett from MDK. Thanks for watching.
You can't tell me now about time. Do you know how many lines I done put down, vibes I done sent out? But we in here, you dig. I love the market till they come red carpet and kids. Success still the target. Soon I'll be crossing that bridge, but can't bring everybody with me. Family only. I got some people think I owe a favor, barely know me. That's why my focus on the road. It's all I know. I see them sticking close to play the